Hey guys, it's Adam, and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I wanted to share with you my personalized tips in order to help you be more creative on YouTube. Now, my first tip for you is to use your creativity kind of like a shield that you hold out in front of you. And what I mean by this is a lot of times we don't feel creative because we know that other people have, say, better gear, or they might have more people helping them, or they can dump more money into their channel. And so we don't feel like being creative. But here's the thing. If you use what you have to the best of your ability and to the best of your knowledge, then you have no reason to be ashamed of what you create. And the reason I say this is that's all you can really do is as long as you are using what you have to the best of your ability, then you're doing the best you can, and so you have nothing to be ashamed of. So if somebody criticizes you, just say, hey, I'm doing the best I can. And then you can feel freed to continue to create because you are being creative and you're doing the best you can. See, for example, with this video, I'm filming it in my hotel room and I'm just using my iPhone 11. And so I don't have my regular gear with me, but that doesn't mean that I can't create. I'm just using the gear that I have to the best of my ability. My next tip for you is don't expect to feel creative. I almost never feel creative, and that's normal. What's important is that you start being creative and doing the task that you're trying to be creative in versus just waiting until you feel creative, because you're probably never going to feel creative. My next tip for you, and this is one you probably weren't expecting, but study comedy. The reason I say this is when you watch a comedian tell a joke, they're really just telling a story, and then they're leading you along that story, and they take a turn that you didn't expect. See, everyone's following the story and they're expecting a particular outcome, and then when the comedian draws a completely different conclusion, then that unique outcome is what makes everybody laugh. And so if you can study how comedy works and you watch these different comedy shows, then not only you'll be able to be more funny on your channel, but you'll be able to better script your videos because you're able to take people along in an engaging and interesting story. But then when you're done and you get to the end of that story, you can draw a conclusion that is either entertaining or it is very insightful, and it's something that's different. And so it makes your content more unique and more creative, which will get you more subscribers. My next tip for you is to lower your standards when it comes to your creativity, specifically at the beginning of the creative task. Now, the reason this is so important is when you first start working on a creative task, like filming a video or something or scripting, you're not going to create your best stuff at the beginning. It's usually as you continue to work on the task that you get more creative over time. And so if you can lower your standards at the beginning, then you won't stop yourself from creating. See, if you expect to always produce at an extremely high quality, then you won't be able to meet this extremely high and unrealistic standard, and you'll start to get frustrated. Whereas if you had just had a realistic expectation of yourself at the very beginning, then you would feel more freed to create your content. So the next tip I have for you is to set the stage for your creativity. Now, the way that you do this is, for example, I'm going to be making a video in the future where I'm going to be talking about audience retention, but I'm going to be using the video Iron Man to make my video on audience retention. So I'm going to be studying the video Iron Man and finding unique examples of audience retention techniques, and then I'm going to use those examples as the subject matter for the video. And as far as I know, there's no other video that's made on audience retention and using Iron Man as the subject matter for the video. So this sets me up to create unique content. Before I've even done the research, I know that the final result will be more engaging and more creative, and so it's going to be a great video. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. So my next tip for you is to embrace the challenge, and to do that by seeing what you have and committing to use what you have and not let what you don't have keep you from creating content. For example, right now I don't have my gear with me, and so I'm using what I have, which is simply just a ring light and a stand for my phone and a cheap microphone, and I'm making my videos. And even though I don't have all of my lights and the rest of my setup, I can still create content. So I'm embracing the challenge and I'm creating anyway. And when you embrace the challenge, then you'll be a lot more motivated, because a lot of times having a challenge is motivating. It's okay to be competitive, to really try to see something that's hard to do and face that challenge and create something new and exciting and engaging. My next tip for you is to just study one thing at a time, whatever it is that you're trying to be creative about, whatever the subject of your video is, and really study just that one thing in depth until you're able to come up with unique and interesting conclusions. And what's amazing is if you go down the rabbit hole, say on YouTube, and you watch videos only in one specific topic, really delving in deep to that subject matter, then you're going to be able to create a more unique and engaging video once you're all done with that research, because you actually took the time to dig deep into that particular topic. So my next tip for you is to realize that it is important to create something rather than to create nothing. See, for example, I didn't know that my phone was automatically filming at 1080p. That's just the default settings. And I recently learned that you need to manually go in there and change it to 4K. And as soon as I did that, the video quality improved. And even though my older videos aren't as good as maybe this video is, it's still good that I created something so that I could start my YouTube journey. So realize that what you produce will not always be at the same level, but as long as you're always trying to be creative, then you'll come up with more creative results than you would if you didn't. So my next tip for you is to script your videos. Now, the reason this is so important is when you go through the process of scripting your videos, then that's where you draw the connections and the interesting ideas. A lot of my best ideas for my videos, they come during the scripting process. It's the foundation of your video. And if you do all of that initial work to kind of figure out what you're trying to say and where you're trying to lead the viewer, then the end product will be so much better, and you'll come up with some of your most creative ideas during that scripting time. My next tip for you is to embrace the snowball effect. Now, the reason this is so important, and what I mean by this, is if you have a snowball and you make it and you start to roll it down a hill, it'll get bigger and bigger over time, and it'll build momentum, and eventually you'll have that like avalanche effect. And when you embrace this concept when it comes to creativity, that by doing whatever it is that you're trying to be creative in, that you will eventually produce a more creative result by that momentum, then you'll be more likely to create more creative content. See, what I'm saying is you got to start creating, even if you don't feel motivated, even if you're not exactly sure what you're trying to create, but just by doing it, you will build momentum, which will help you get from where you are at the beginning to where you want to be at the end of your video. So my next tip is something that comes from my experience with writing, but if you're writing, say, a story, or even if you're writing a script for your video, when you start writing, even if you don't know what you're trying to say, that is the first step to getting towards the end result. See, a lot of times when I want to write, but I just don't feel like writing, I'll start to write just whatever comes to my mind, even if it's kind of totally random. And by doing that, you start to get into the groove of writing, and then you actually end up starting to write something that's really good. And the same goes with your videos. So if you don't know what to make your video about, start looking at other videos on channels that you like and start looking at their titles and their thumbnails and getting inspiration. Start doing things that will spur that creativity. And as you do that, you will be more creative. And another thing that comes from my writing is if you don't know exactly the whole picture, say you don't have the whole story, but you do have certain points, or in the case of YouTube, certain things that you definitely want to be in your video, then if you write down those points that you already figured out, then you'll be able to now have those endpoints, and you can now work towards figuring out how to get from point A to point B so that you can get to that end result of the full story of your video. So don't be afraid to just write down random pieces. It's okay to not have everything figured out at the beginning, but by doing that, you set yourself up to know where you're trying to go with your video, and then you'll be able to actually get there. So my next tip for you is brainstorming. Brainstorming is a great way to come up with ideas. Just grab a notebook and a pen and start writing down your ideas, even if they're totally random, and even if a lot of them don't honestly make sense for your channel. Just writing down ideas will help you get more ideas. And sometimes it will help you come up with a way to connect two unrelated things together, which will create a more engaging viewer experience. Next, I would just like to encourage you to work in the morning. if you work when you have the most energy, then the product that you create will be more creative. See, usually in the morning you have more energy, you have more ideas, you're more likely to feel and be creative. And so if you do that and you do your most creative tasks or your most important tasks in the morning, then you'll be a lot more likely to create more videos, which will get you more subscribers. My last tip for you is to do everything you possibly can to get rid of distractions. And the way that you do this is like, if you're filming on your phone, put your phone into do not disturb mode. When you do that, then you won't get notifications popping up when you're trying to film. Turn those notifications off when you're trying to work on your brainstorming or your scripting. Tell people that you're busy so that they won't interrupt you, so that you can get to a creative point and feel more creative. If you enjoyed this video, you might also like my video on don't sub for sub, do this instead. It's a very creative video where I explain my unique process for using comments to get more subscribers on YouTube. So you will definitely want to check out that video. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing so that I can help you get more subscribers on YouTube.